Hey everybody, welcome back to Library Says. My name is Jamie, and today I'm wrapping up all 13 books I read in July. July was kind of an abnormal reading month for me in that I mostly read thrillers and mysteries, which I would say are my two, or at least two of my least read genres, and I had a great reading month. So clearly I need to read more. So I did start the month with a thriller. It was really out of my wheelhouse and super random, but I saw the cover, it snagged my interest. I read the summary and thought that sounds cool, and so I read it and I loved it. I read it in like 2 days, and that is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. So this is an almost Agatha Christie-esque setup of a small group of people invited to a creepy island off the coast of Ireland that is supposedly haunted. There's a cemetery, and they're staying in this old inn. We start at the wedding reception, and a dead body has been found, and it appears it has been murdered. But we don't know who the victim is, how they died, who the murderer is, anything. And then we jump back to the day before the wedding and work our way slowly back up to the moment the body is found. And then we bounce back to the moment the body is found and get a little bit more information as we go, and then bounce back and work our way. And it just keeps kind of bouncing back and forth, and it's really an interesting way to set the whole thing up because you don't know anything. Usually you don't know who the murderer was, but in this case you don't even know who the victim is, and it's really a lot of fun. You're also following, I think, 6 or 7 points of view of the bride and the bride's sister, the bride's best friend's wife, and a couple of other people, the best man. They are all very unlikable, which I've seen some people complain about. I thought it was fascinating because they're all really well done, and when you're in their head and you're getting more and more of their backstory, it's so interesting because they're all awful and they all have motives to want to kill basically everybody else. So it's fascinating trying to figure out who you think the victim is and who you think the murderer is. When there are a whole lot of red herrings, there are a whole lot of twists that shocked me. There were some things I found predictable. In the end, the victim, I did guess quite a ways out from the actual reveal, but it didn't bother me that I had guessed because it was really well done. The murderer, I did not guess, and I did not guess the murderer's motivations. So I'll be interested to hear if you've read it, what you think. It seems like it's all over the board with people who loved this and people who didn't, but I fall on the side of those who loved it, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I bounced back to a mystery series I read maybe a year and a half ago, or at least I started, and that's the Mary Russell mysteries. This series follows Mary Russell, who in the first book is 15 years old, and meets an older Sherlock Holmes after he's retired from the mystery solving game. They become friends, and then as she grows up over the course of the first 2 books, they become mystery solving partners, and then more than that. I'm just obsessed with them. They're not romances, so like don't make that mistake. Don't go in thinking these are Sherlock Holmes romances. It's not that at all. There is that element, but it's very light, it's very subtle. It's mostly the mysteries and the historical elements because these do take place in the early 1900s, like the 19-teens and 1920s mostly. These books, okay, I read the first 4, like I said, a year and a half ago, and then put them down, moved on to other things, and I think that's a totally fine way to do this series because they are very insular. Each book has its own thing going on, and you definitely need to read the first 2 back to back and in order to get the evolution of their relationship. But after that, most of them are singular mysteries, like almost episodic. There are a few that rely on characters or plot points that are developed in earlier books, but you can look that up really easily if there's some that you might want to skip, which has been my experience. I think eventually I'll go back and read the whole series. For now, I've skipped around quite a bit, and it's been completely fine. The reason I actually jumped back into this series is because someone on my Goodreads feed had read the 14th book in the series, The Murder of Mary Russell, and the idea of it, that Mary Russell has been murdered and or kidnapped, and now Sherlock has to find out what happened to her, was so intriguing to me that I jumped in without having read books 5 through 13. That was fine. And then I backtracked a bit and I skipped a few that didn't sound as interesting to me, and I read the 6th book, which is Justice Hall, and the 8th book, Locked Rooms. I gave both of those 4 stars, and I had a blast with them. I also read a novella. I guess the title gives it away. It's called The Marriage of Mary Russell, and I read it. It's a quick novella. So I did read 3 of these books and a novella this month, and I loved all of them, and I'm definitely going to keep trucking along with the series. Then I read 2 classics back to back, also not super common for me. I read Daddy Longlegs by Jean Webster, which was written in the 19-teens, I think, and follows a girl who has been raised in an orphanage and is about to age out, and a mysterious benefactor writes a letter to the orphanage saying he wants to pay her way through college, and the only requirement is that she writes at least one letter a month to him to apprise him of her progress. The book is entirely epistolary at that point. We follow her through college, and we follow her experiences as she writes letters to her mysterious benefactor, who she calls Daddy Longlegs, because she one time saw a shadow of his that made him look like he had very long legs. And there you go. It was fantastic. For a book that was actually written in the 19-teens and was contemporary when it was written, it is so relatable. And there are so many moments where I related to this character so much, considering it was 100+ years ago, and it felt almost modern. There are obviously things, she mentions women not having suffrage, as it's just a fact of life, and that was sort of shocking to me because so many other elements felt real and current, and I loved it. It does have a romantic element that I also loved. I loved the friendships. It's a very quick read too, so I really enjoyed that I could just zip right through it, and I highly recommend, and I give it 5 stars. I immediately followed that up with Pride and Prejudice. I've mentioned before that this year my goal is to read all Jane Austen's novels, all of her published novels, in publication order, and as of yet, up until July, I had only read one, which was Sense and Sensibility. Next up was Pride and Prejudice, which I love Pride and Prejudice. I don't know why I put it off, but I read it. I was as consumed by it as I have ever been while reading it, even though it's been several years. I, of course, gave it 5 stars. Then I read a pseudo-mystery, which was Engagement and Espionage by Penny Reed. This is a spin-off series from her Beard books, which are romances about a bunch of bearded brothers in small-town mountainous Tennessee. Each book follows one of the brothers as they fall in love, and I really, really love them. And my favorite couple from the series is Cletus and Jen, and this spin-off series follows this couple as they start solving mysteries. They're sort of cozy mysteries meets romance. And this one follows them trying to solve a mystery of who has killed a bunch of chickens and who's buying up farms and basically getting in the way of Jen's bakery business. Mostly I just love to be back in their town, back in the story of Jen and Cletus, watching their relationship evolve after their book. The mystery was sort of not even an issue. Like, it was very predictable. I didn't care about it. For that reason, I gave this book 3 stars. I know this is going to be a whole series, so I'm hoping that in future books the mysteries are a little more complex and more engaging, because I could easily give these books 4 stars because I love the couple so much, but we spent enough time on sort of a lackluster mystery that I did drop it to 3. Then I read something sort of embarrassing, and that's The Darcy's New Pleasures by Linda Birdall. Linda Birdall writes Pride and Prejudice fanfiction, essentially. They continue Pride and Prejudice after Darcy and Elizabeth have gotten married. The first one is Mr. Darcy Takes a Wife. I've read it so many times, my copy's literally falling apart. I love it. It's explicit. It's not Jane Austen. It's its own thing. And a lot of tried and true Pride and Prejudice fans do not like these and do not like the idea of them. For me, I'm not a purist in that way. I've always enjoyed fanfiction, so I can appreciate Pride and Prejudice, and I can appreciate Linda Birdall's books and not have them be contradictory interests. This one is the 4th book in that series of Linda Birdall's, and easily the weakest. I think the first one's really the only one that's kind of a gem. From there, I feel like she's kind of pushing it. But I did read it. It was my first time reading this one. I've read all the other ones in the series at least twice, I think. And I gave it 3 stars because I enjoyed being back in the world of this Darcy and Elizabeth, but ultimately it was sort of like, meh. Plot-wise. After that, I read one of my favorite books that I've read probably this year, and that was Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. This is nonfiction. I actually listened to the audiobook read by the author, and his voice was so powerful and rhythmic, and it just felt very personal listening to this. It's also personal because the entire book is written as a letter from the author to his 15-year-old son. And we follow in the book Ta-Nehisi Coates growing up in Baltimore, going to Howard University, moving to New York City, becoming a writer, and his sort of evolution of his ideals and his beliefs about things and his perceptions of the world. All of this coming back, of course, to race in America. And his concerns and fears and hopes for his son also growing up a black man in America. It was beautiful and heart-wrenching and so profound. And I really found myself just kind of sitting there and listening and staring at the wall, which it's rare that an audiobook has that ability where I'm not also wanting to do something else while I listen. And for this one, I just listened. I gave it 5 stars, and I have every intention now of reading other work by Ta-Nehisi Coates. If you have any that are favorites of yours, please recommend them. I'd love to hear about them and to check them out. Then I read yet another thriller. and that was The Escape Room by Megan Golden. This book follows 5 coworkers. They're all investment bankers on Wall Street, lots of big money being made and lost as they get invited to an after-hours mandatory invited, to an after-hours work function in a not yet open to the public building that's still semi-under construction at night. They go into an elevator to go up to this floor that they're told that they need to meet on. The elevator stops between floors, and they realize they're in an escape room, and they guess this is what the event is. We have to figure out how to get out of here, but most escape rooms are only an hour, so if we don't figure it out in an hour, so what? Meanwhile, we're also bouncing back several years in the past to a woman who used to work with all of them as she gets a job working with their team and making her way on Wall Street and dealing with the misogyny of being a woman on Wall Street and dealing with this tight-knit group of coworkers and the secrets and lies and how cutthroat everything is. As you're learning more about her, you're also bouncing back to the 5 that are in the elevator. Things get sketchy. Suddenly, it's not an hour, it's been 2 hours, then it's been 3 hours, and they're still trapped together. Secrets and lies are coming out, and there's so much drama. And you'd think there wasn't a lot of plot that could happen with 5 people trapped in an elevator for an entire book. You'd be wrong. I was so captivated, and I had no problem bouncing back and forth. I was just as interested, completely captivated by Sarah, the other coworker's point of view as we're learning about her, even though she's not in the elevator and we don't know what's happened to her and why she doesn't work with them anymore. I was just as interested in that as I was what was happening in the elevator. I gave this one 4 stars, highly recommended. Then I read a YA contemporary fiction romance, sort of. It's called 5 Ways to Fall Out of Love. I read it while on a weekend adventure in the woods. If you'd like to hear my thoughts on it, I did give it 4 stars. I liked it a whole lot, and I broke down my thoughts about it in a vlog that I did of that weekend in the woods. If you'd like some summer woodsy vibes and some talking about books, go check that vlog out right there. And then the very last book I read in July, I'm sort of embarrassed, but I loved it. It's The Idea of You by Robin Lee. This book is basically Harry Styles fanfiction. I'm not a One Direction or Harry Styles fan. I never have been. I like, some of their songs, but I think I was maybe a little too old. I never fell into that demographic. And I've never read other One Direction fanfiction. I never got into After or anything like that. This is very, very different than that. Going in, it's not explicitly Harry Styles fanfiction, and it never was published Harry Styles fanfiction the way After was. It is about a 39-year-old woman who takes her 12-year-old daughter to a concert of August Moon, a British boy band. And she is a divorcee. And at an after-party, VIP event, she meets the lead singer, Hayes. He is 20 years old, 19 years younger than Selene, our main character. They immediately hit it off. And it follows their tumultuous, pseudo-forbidden, highly scandalous relationship as it develops, and it takes them all over the world, causes a lot of drama, as you can imagine, with her ex and her daughter. I loved it. I read it on the suggestion of one of my coworkers. She really enjoyed it and thought I might too. She really just wanted someone to talk to about it. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll read it. I read it in one day. I couldn't put it down. I found the relationship so compelling. The characters were just, the chemistry was incredible. And also, the writing is really good. Robin Lee, the author, is an attorney and an actress. I've actually seen her in things, but she also is apparently an incredible writer. I just found the writing really good on a sentence level. Really good, and it just developed really well, and I just was attached. I was so deeply attached to this couple and to all of the characters, and when it ended, I felt like I'd just been kicked in the chest that it was over. And I was just desperate to see if there was going to be a sequel, which there isn't, and there might be, but not yet. I just can't stop thinking about it, and it's been several days now. It's been a week, I think, since I finished it, and I can't stop thinking about it, and I just want to reread it more and more and more. It's been a long time since a romance got to me quite that way. So highly recommend you check it out if that sounds at all interesting to you. I did give it 5 stars. So that's it. Those are the 13 books I read in July. I had a really solid reading month. Nothing bad. I enjoyed myself, and I read stuff kind of all over the board, and I loved it, which is exactly the kind of reading month I want to have always. Hopefully you're all having a great reading month as well. Hope you're having a good August so far, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye.